With Season 12 right around the corner, it's time we update you guys on the 10 champions you'll want to avoid playing in Ranked. Now, don't get us wrong, you can climb with any champion. However, the picks we feature in this video are the ones who will bring you the greatest challenge in doing so. If your main goal is to climb Ranked the fastest, then staying away from these 10 champions will be in your best interest. But before we get into it, be sure to check out SkillCapped if you want to truly get better at League of Legends. We're the only service that offers a money-back guarantee if you don't climb at least 5 divisions while actively using our service. We do this because our service really does work, and if it doesn't work for you, you shouldn't pay. Learn more at the end of this video or click the link in the description below. Earlier in Season 11, Gwen was known as one of the more dominant top lane picks, but that is no longer the case heading into Season 12. So much of Gwen's laning power came from the mass amount of attack speed on E at level 1, but after Riot snipped the stats in half from 40 to 20%, she fell out of meta. Since Gwen's kit lacks any hard CC or strong utility, she's very reliant on being a powerful damage source to be useful. If you fall behind early on, you're of little use to your team, so the risk to reward trade-off isn't very good. Matchup-wise, Gwen is being absolutely stomped by meta fighter top laners like Jax, Yone, and Jace. Champions that can gap close aggressively and dive right onto Gwen do a good job at nullifying her ranged advantage. As a result, Gwen is a situational pickup at best if you know how to pilot her properly, but even then there are many stronger top laners to choose from for Season 12. Midway through Season 11, Gangplank was issued a couple nerfs that hit his early laning substantially. Passive bonus movement speed was reduced, while his Q no longer applies on hit effects as if Gangplank was melee. Since the power from Grasp is diminished for ranged attacks, this made GP's Q poke less oppressive early on. As a result, the skill required to play Gangplank at a competitive level shot up even further. Unless you've spent countless games on Gangplank, his relative strength in the current meta is quite low. With many high mobility fighters like Aurelia and Jax in meta, it's become even more difficult for Gangplank to succeed. Playing into these lethal tempo abusers that can run you down with auto attacks requires immaculate spacing, which the majority of players don't have. You're required to put in so much more work in order to thrive with GP compared to many other tops, so if you enjoy a challenge, by all means, but if you like climbing in Ranked, we would recommend staying away. Throughout the majority of Season 11, Olaf really struggled to find a place in meta, and Season 12 is not looking any better. Olaf is a champion who needs to be ahead early game to be effective, but with less reliance on early crab, one of his core strengths has been eliminated. Skirmishing over early scuttles is where Olaf can thrive, but since crab isn't worth nearly as much anymore, the enemy jungler doesn't have to suffice. It's way more difficult to consistently obtain an early advantage with Olaf, which makes him a very lackluster pick. A skill shot slow is the only utility Olaf provides, and he falls off extremely hard later in the game. With objective bounties introduced, it becomes even more difficult for a heavy early game reliant jungler like Olaf to succeed. With marksmen like Vayne, Ezreal, and Caitlyn in meta who possess strong kiting power, Olaf is a sitting duck without ultimate. Couple this with the fact enchanter sports like Lulu, Soraka, and Nami are in meta means it's increasingly difficult to blind pick Olaf and expect positive results. Another jungler who Riot seems to have forgotten about is Volibear. Volley really lacks any kind of identity right now, as he's simply outclassed by other junglers. If you want a melee fighter who can gank effectively early on, then there's no reason to pick Volley over Hecarim. If you prefer a scaling fighter, then Kayn is 10 times more useful in the mid game with a couple items. Kayn and Graves have always been matchups in which Volley struggles against, and both champs are picked a ton right now. One factor keeping Volley afloat in previous patches was thanks to how broken Predator was, but due to the nerfs, he's taken a sizable hit. Similar to Olaf, Volley really struggles in the later stages against champs with strong kite and healing power. Since Vayne is on top of meta along with enchanter supports, you need to get a massive early lead in order to win out. We wouldn't be surprised to see Volley targeted with a buff in the coming patches, but until then, you should prioritize junglers higher up on our tier list. Solo queue Ryze has been in a terrible state for many months, and nothing has changed in that regard for Season 12. It's actually quite impressive how long Ryze has been able to hold down a sub 45% win rate. His meta matchups are absolutely atrocious, with Victor and Lux being the most played mids. As a short-ranged mage, Ryze has such difficulty into longer-ranged picks like Victor, who can just sit back, nail you with E and ult, while you have no chance to fight back. The micro required to play Ryze at a worthwhile level is above most players' capabilities. In Masters and above, you can make the champ work, but for the majority of players, he's just not worth the trouble. Simply put, unless you're a mastered Ryze one-trick, there are a plethora of better options for Season 12. Ever since the 11.17 Lucian changes, his bot lane power has shot up, but mid lane has suffered in expense. As an early game snowball reliant champion, Riot took away a good chunk of that strength by reducing Lucian's base AD. From then on, most Lucian mid players have struggled to see positive results. If you want to play an ADC mid, there's no reason to pick Lucian over Corki. Lucian is way more reliant on winning out early game success, while Corki scales better and has stronger roaming power with package. With Lucian, you're throwing all your eggs in the early game basket, and if you end up falling behind, you're of no use at all. The only thing Lucian provides for his team is damage, which makes him a very feast or famine mid laner. Similar to Ryze, Lucian's matchups in meta are unfavorable. Victor, Uxin, Vex, Lux, the list goes on and on as to how many unwinnable matchups Lucian has. Only matchup Lucian consistently does well into is Galio, but he's rarely played at all in the current meta. Weak scaling and mechanical intensiveness don't bode well if you're looking for a high-value ADC for Season 12. Kalista fits that criteria, and is one of the most underwhelming bot lane carries. Strong scaling marksmen like Jinx and Vayne are dominating the meta, which is terrible for Kalista. Unless you can amass a crazy early game advantage, there's no way Kalista can compete 20 minutes onwards. You might as well throw in the towel if you don't come out of lane with a few kills, because a Vayne with Soraka or Lulu is going to be 10 times more useful later on. The objective bounty introduction is not something Kalista enjoys, as it only gives the enemy team a greater chance at scaling you. There just isn't any incentive to prioritize Kalista over 99% of the other ADCs, so your time is better spent learning other picks. For our second ADC pick, we have Varus, albeit he's not in as bad a state as Kalista for solo queue. If you want to play a strong utility marksman with good pick power, then Jhin is in a great spot. If you prefer a strong hyper carry, then Jinx or Vayne are the better options. Varus lacks any kind of identity right now, as he's a pick who does everything okay, but doesn't excel in any field. If you're a Varus one-trick, he's a viable pick, but for the average player, there's no selling point at the moment. With Enchanter supports being played a ton in meta, it doesn't fit Varus' theme as much as other ADCs. Varus wants to be aggressive, looking for pick plays with ult, but because we're seeing way less aggro supports, the follow-up on picks is less reliable. If you can guarantee an aggressive support duo, then you can make it work, but as a consistent blind pick, Varus doesn't stand up. Set as a top laner is in a pretty good spot for Season 12, but the same can't be said about support. It's so difficult for Set to exist in a solo queue meta where Lulu, Nami, and Lux are the most played champions. Set already has a difficult time reaching his target due to the lack of gap closer, so having to break through the utility of enchanters diminishes his power even more. Set's engage plays are very linear in the sense that you have to run right up to the enemy and hit them with E to be useful. This makes it relatively easy for a meta support like Lux to play at a safe range and simply throw out a bind if you try and walk forward. With Flash available, your ability to make plays is quite good, but relying on a summoner spell with such a long cooldown is not ideal. If you want to play a tanky support with strong engage power, then Maokai is just the better version of Set. There was a period of time where Galio support was an amazing counter to the meta, but that time has passed. Galio has a spot in our list as he struggles due to many of the same weaknesses we highlighted for Set. Galio loves playing against champions who dive into him so that he can get good use out of W taunt. If Galio isn't getting consistent use out of his taunt, there's simply no reason to prioritize him. We're seeing less and less hard engaged supports played, while ranged supports like Lux and Nami have taken over the meta. Your laning power into double ranged bot lane is super weak, which hurts Galio a ton right now. Especially if you're playing into ADC with a dash or blink, it's nearly impossible for you to do anything at all for the first few minutes. In a lot of matchups, you'll just end up getting shoved in under tower, poked away at while the enemy enchanter outlanes and eventually outscales you later on. Alright guys, before we wrap this up, let's tell you a little more about SkillCapped. So, we offer a 5-division rank up guarantee and think that's a pretty crazy thing to offer. It's like a gym membership guaranteeing you'll get ripped. Your local gym would go bust if they offered that, right? Not us. We've offered this for years because our service really does work. It works so well, in fact, that we're able to produce by far the largest catalog of premium league guides on the internet. We add over 20 videos a week, with over 1,600 guides curated into over 100 courses no one can compare. We've also sent challenger players into ELO Hell 714 times and counting, where they commentate how to carry live. They also respond to all questions asked. Sign up today for as little as $4.99 a month if you are serious about improving. Alright everyone, those are the 10 champions we would recommend you stay away from as you embark on your ranked journey for Season 12. Thanks so much for watching, and we will see you back soon.